Environmental and health groups are suing the Environmental Protection Agency. The federal lawsuit filed today says the agency's decision to eliminate the endangerment finding is illegal. The finding is the scientific conclusion that greenhouse gases harm public health and had been the foundation of climate regulations in this country since 2009. In its repeal of the finding, the Trump administration says Congress, not the EPA, is responsible for setting the level of a policy decision. So look, this is an issue that a lot of people have questions about. So when we have those questions.
And it's a big one.
Yeah.
It's a big topic that, packs our brain. It could have a larger impact, though, across our state. So that's why we bring in 9 News legal expert Whitney Traylor. And I mean, there's a lot of science here and everything else, but those issues do impact all of us.
Yes, these issues impact all of us. And although not everybody, this isn't a class action lawsuit. This is a lawsuit where a coalition of health and environmental groups are suing the EPA. And to really understand this lawsuit, we have to go back to 2007, because that was when the Supreme Court ruled that greenhouse gases were in fact pollutants, and they ordered the EPA to do a study to determine whether those pollutants harm the general public. And so in 2009, they came out, the EPA did its study, came out with this endangerment finding, and found that yes, these greenhouse gases actually affect our current generation and future generations. So that led to so many laws related to greenhouse gas, particularly in the auto industry. So now the EPA, you've had nearly 20 years of science, a plethora of science supporting this notion, and now this current EPA has just reversed that endangerment ruling. So now all of these regulations related to the auto industry and things like that can now be reversed. So this was a major ruling by the EPA.
So the Trump administration has made no secret of wanting to deregulate in a lot of industries. But in this particular industry, we're talking about a couple of decades of science here. So what's the argument against the science?
Well, the argument, and that's the whole point. The plaintiffs have said in the lawsuit, this is a quote from the claim, after 2 decades of scientific evidence supporting the 2009 finding, the agency cannot credibly claim that that body of work is now incorrect. And that's essentially what they're doing. And so that's why this is a number of, the plaintiffs are a number of different agencies. And there's other lawsuits lined up, California being one of them. So this is going to be in litigation for years and years, because that's the exact argument. You can't just suddenly reverse the science and say, no, there's no greenhouse gas effect when the science says there absolutely
When you think
is.
about it, when you say it applies to all of us, I mean, like emissions testing. I mean, we're just like, we've been, how many years have we had that? We know we check to see what our cars are putting out into the air and things like that. And days when we're warned about pollution levels and we're encouraged to not drive, things like that. So it's so complicated. We were asking about this. They don't want money per se, right? They just want to, what do they want? I mean, usually in these big lawsuits, we're thinking, oh, there's this big money settlement.
No, that's a great question, because most lawsuits come down to what you can recover is either a legal remedy, which is money, or an equitable remedy, which is some sort of an action, an injunction. So in this case, the focus is on the equitable remedy, and they're saying, hey, court, we want you to say the EPA's rule where they repealed this endangerment finding is unlawful. So they basically want the court to just make a ruling that says, hey, EPA, you can't do this. And the endangerment ruling is still in effect. So that's going to take some time. And it's currently, so this was an EPA rule. They went to the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. That's where they're at now. And however that court rules, it will definitely get appealed to the Supreme Court. And I suspect the Supreme Court would accept it.
Yeah, which is where this began, as you point out, in 2007.
Yes.
All right, Whitney, thanks for going through that, because as Kim points out, there's a lot here. There's decades of science and the fight over regulation. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and when it hits Supreme Court, we'll all be saying, what? Oh, yeah, Whitney told us that. Whitney told us that would happen.
Yes, I'll come back in a year or so.
Okay, thank you.
All right.